was like there's cows all around the house, except for the driveway. You went down a fenced driveway and got into the house. There's a little yard and so forth, but literally cows all around you. And it was like the bunkhouse for a cattle ranch. That just happened to be haunted.
What?
It turns out, yeah, we're pretty sure it was haunted. So they didn't market it that way. But we stayed there, and yes, something was going on because everybody had a weird thing happen. So, yeah, so I mean, that's the kind of thing that
Can you elaborate at all? You can't leave me like
sure.
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. All right, welcome into another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast. Of course, my name is Bill Ream. I'm your host, and this week I have someone who I've been excited to talk with, somebody I was trying to connect with for many, many months. By the time you hear this, it'll probably have been almost a year. He is the host of some stupid show. In all honesty, he is a podcast and broadcast legend. I have Bob on the show today, and if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself to our listeners, Bob, who are you?
Hey, I'm Bob LeMent, and yes, I'm on a stupid show, and sometimes more than one. That's the great thing. Sometimes I'm on, a couple of stupid shows, so it all works out. But yeah, the main show that I do is called Static Radio, staticradio.com. I'll get my plug in early, and a lot of times I tell stories, and they're hopefully funny stories. If not funny, at least somewhat strange and humorous in some way.
And you do have a partner in crime who's been your cohort for...
We don't need to bring up the bad side of things, do we?
Well, I mean, you were the man, but...
Where's he at? He's not here. Come on.
That's true. So
yeah, Miles' title is my co-host on the show. And yeah, we've been friends for a very long time. So I should be nicer about it, but...
Well,
I might not.
I don't think you really are on the show, so it's why change now.
Yeah. Well, there you go. See?
So, how long have you guys been doing this? Static Radio specifically.
Oh, yeah. So Static Radio started back, I would say officially in January 1999. We did some test shows almost in November 1998. We did a couple of test shows around Thanksgiving, and then I always just say in earnest, we started in January to make it simple because I can't do good math on big numbers. And so therefore it's helped me out in the future to say that. So I was really nice to my future self by just rounding it up.
Yeah. So even if you had been ready earlier, you would have said, no, let's just wait till January.
We'll just wait till January. Well, by January, I think we knew this was something that we were going to continue, where in, November and December, we're like, are we really going to do this every week? Come on. That sounds stupid.
But look at today.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You were podcasting before the term hadn't even probably been coined yet.
And it worked, correct. Yeah, it didn't get coined until 2004. We were doing what people were calling internet radio at that time. Is what everybody called it. And that's why we call ourselves Static Radio, because internet radio. And so, yeah, it was, but we just kept it because by the time podcasting came around, I had the web address and everything. So why change?
Yeah.
So,
when you first started it, I mean, really the World Wide Web as we know it was still really just being formed. right? I
Yeah,
mean,
no, yeah.
because we're
There
talking.
was no MP3. I always tell people that, and they are shocked. They're like, we didn't even record an MP3.
Yeah, what were
There
you
was no
recording back
MP3
then? WAV
standard yet.
files?
No, so we did a thing called Real Audio, which was one of the earliest
Oh,
forms of audio on the internet. Yeah.
I remember Real Audio. They actually, they had
Yeah.
music stations and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, they did all kinds of stuff with Real Audio. You know, Winamp and Real Audio were kind of the initial stuff that everybody used, and you kind of went one way or the other. But yeah, we started out in Real Audio for a little over a year, and then I think I'm trying to remember when MP3 came along, but it was a couple of years before MP3 came along. But we did that, and then I think for a while we were doing QuickTime files because Real Audio upped all of its prices, and I'm like, I'm not paying that. So we did QuickTime audio for a while, and then finally MP3s were it, and that's where everything settled in at. So
Nice.
yeah,
And so,
wild.
and you've basically been the same format the whole time, really, just kind of just BSing.
Yeah. So that BSing, sure. Yeah. No, we have. So we came up because originally we didn't do a half an hour. We did about 15 minutes tops because the files were so large and you only had so much space. And so 15 minutes was kind of like the max that you'd want to do because it took forever to upload and everything back then. And then slowly over time, we pretty much do a half-hour show, and it's kind of settled in like that, where each week we each tell a story. It's a story of something that's happened to us that is hopefully funny, and then as one person's telling their story, the other person is basically tearing them up, and then vice versa. Yeah, mocking them mercilessly, and then it spins off into the idea is every week we're supposed to bring a story. It doesn't always work out that way, but hopefully it works out to be more fun if we spin off into other things. So
yeah, well, it's
so far so good.
For what it's worth, honestly, I mean, you guys obviously, like you said, you've known each other forever. You can tell that you, respect whether you like to admit it or not, respect each other.
I don't. I respect
that camaraderie and the banter back and forth. I think is awesome. It's really entertaining to listen to. It is just like you're sitting down, just listening to a couple friends just razz on each other.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. The idea has always been we basically go into it to make each other laugh, and in the process, hopefully, everybody always says, if you can have fun, then other people have fun with you. And so I think that's the formula, is for us to always have fun with it, and then bring people along. I always think of it whenever I think about people that I hear, or people on TV or whatever. I'm always like, I'd like to go out and have a drink with that person because I think it would be such a fun time. And that's what we're shooting for. It's like, oh, that would be fun if we were just, hanging out and got to be involved in this chaos that sometimes totally erupts and takes over. So, yeah.
Awesome. And now look at you. I mean, if those of you who haven't checked out the website yet, are you on YouTube as well?
Yeah, we've got some YouTube going on and just about everywhere. I mean, I try to post as many places as we can without driving myself crazy with all of the different platforms. But yeah, we're on all the majors, and I think I did have a Rumble or something too, because that was a thing for a while. But I don't know. I don't post. It's supposed to do it automatically, but I don't know if it does. I haven't checked in a while, so I'll be honest with you.
I don't know that any
kind of fell off.
I was going to say, I don't know that most other people have checked either, so I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Probably not. It was a thing for a minute, and I'm like, I got to get an account, and then, I got the account, and then I've kind of fallen off the radar because, nobody really checks it out anymore. So
I mean, it sounds like a dating app now, so I'm not sure if that's.
Oh, really? Rumble's a dating app? Well, maybe.
I don't know that it is, but it sounds like it could be.
Maybe I'll find that one person I've been looking for.
There you go. So staticradio.com, is it basically the socials? Are they all also Static Radio?
Yeah, most of them are at Static Radio. Yeah, so everything's at Static Radio, much to the chagrin of the band Static Radio New Jersey.
Well,
So they have static radio NJ because they can't get static radio because I've been, very predatory and getting all those handles whenever they come available.
Well, I'm sure for the right price.
Yeah, well, I think they've kind of, settled into static radio NJ, which to be honest, I never really listened to their music, but I'm assuming it's good.
It's got to be. It's got to be good.
It's got to be good.
So excellent. Well, and I'll put the links in the show notes and stuff as well, of course.
Yeah, leave the NJ off. I was just, it's just a joke.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. I'll make sure to ignore that part. So awesome. Well, really excited to have you on. I know you told me that you've been all over the US and you've been overseas once, but how did that become a thing for you? I know also through talking with you, the travel is an important thing for you and you really enjoy it. So was that something that started when you were young? Like, did your family travel?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, my family didn't travel very much at all. Maybe that's why I like it so much now. So as a kid, I think, at least from my memory, which could be faulty at this point, who knows? But when I was a kid, we went to places in Missouri or Florida. It seemed to be the only two places we went as a kid. I don't remember, we didn't go too many other places. The other big thing that I recall as a kid was we went to the World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee, which has been a major joke on The Simpsons several times, apparently, because if anybody knows about the World's Fair in Knoxville, they had a thing called the Sun Sphere, which was basically looks like a giant gear shift made out of mirrored glass. And that was like the big centerpiece of the World's Fair. In several Simpsons episodes, I think they make fun of the Sun Sphere, like melting people's ice cream and killing them and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that was it for as a kid. No, we didn't really go too many places. And so that the travel bug really kind of came to me after I got married because my wife likes to travel. And so, I'm all for that. And so, yeah, we kind of just did things on our own. And then we've never been, I don't know if you we did talk, you do have kids, right? So,
yes.
And so the other thing was not to stop because we had children, right? So when the kids were little, when they were really little, we didn't go anywhere. But I mean, whenever they were still, 3, 4, whatever, we went. And that was the other thing that we always wanted to do was because we wanted the kids to get exposure to being in other places and getting to see things. And that was one of our big pushes to get over to Europe was my kids were like younger, I guess, preteen and teen years. And we wanted to get them over there and have them see some stuff at a younger age so that they would be a little more interested in places. So many people spend so much time where they're born and, kind of their little orbit where they live at. And then then other places always seem dangerous or weird or what have you. And so I think that getting outside of that area helps you grow as a person because then you don't see everything through that same filter.
Yeah.
Not to say everybody, thinks everything's dangerous, but it seems like a lot of people do. And then after they get away from that, then of course it opens up everything, right? You're like, oh, well, that's not so bad. Maybe I could go do something else. And so that was one of the things that we were really wanting to kind of instill, in our kids so that way there's not this fear of travel because the news really, puts the screws to you a lot of times with their stories, about, well, I don't want to go here. As a matter of fact, just until I think within the last year, St. Louis has been on the top of the list of a place not to go in the United States because it's so dangerous, right? And so, yeah, but obviously statistically there may be some, validity to some of that, but your chances are you're not going to be in the places that this is happening.
Right. As long as you're not going for the most budget motel that you can get.
Right. I mean, if we're talking, regular kind of middle class kind of travel, you're going to be fine. It is perfectly fine and perfectly safe. And And if you have your wits about you, it's gonna be great. There's a lot of fun things to do. During the government shutdown, the city literally paid all of the rangers to work on the weekends because the arch is such a draw. And they kept the arch open through the whole government shutdown over the weekends so that people could come visit the arch.
Wow. That's really
So,
cool too.
I mean, that's, I mean, I don't know if other monuments did that, but here in St. Louis, they did. So they wanted to make sure, because people come to the city to see that and to go up into the arch. And it's a big deal for the city. And it's also a big deal for those people who want to go. And so therefore, it was important, and they made it work. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting to me. I was surprised by it, to be honest. I'm like, really? Oh, they won't fix the streets? No, I'm just joking. But no, that was the thing. But and just so, and I don't know, have you been to the arch before?
I haven't yet. And
Okay.
Please call me Bill.
Okay, Bill, you been to the arch, Bill?
No, I haven't.
Well, that's okay. I'm not going to put you down for it, but I'm going to tell you, did you know there's a whole museum underneath the arch?
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that either.
And most people don't know this, and I'm always surprised whenever I talk to somebody and they're like, really? I go, yeah, it's called the Museum of Westward Expansion, and it is a fabulous museum that is literally underneath the arch.
Well, they need to do a better job with signage. Apparently.
Yeah, they do. But when you go, I mean, typically to go up in the tram for the arch, because it's not new and it's not like a regular elevator.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time because they book up, pretty early in the day. And so, yeah, you can go through the museum and wait for your turn to get stuffed into an egg and shot up the leg of the arch. It's fantastic.
Bob's side gig, by the way, he works for the tourism department of St. Louis. So.
Well, they just did a whole revamp of the arch grounds, and so they're even more spectacular than they used to be, believe it or not. So, yeah, you should come downtown and go to the arch. It's really quite nice. Now, the river's there, but it smells of dead fish. But just don't go all the way down to the river.
Oh, you're getting fired. You're getting fired, Bob. Yeah, I'll try to make it out there sometime and watch the Pirates lose to the Cardinals. That would be
there you go. There you go. Yeah, the stadium's downtown. Yep.
Yeah.
The new Busch Stadium, I guess, is what they call it. It's pretty nice. I've been there. So, yeah, big baseball town here in St. Louis. But
so I think this is as good a point of any for me to ask you the show's title, and we can let's just have a drink and chat and say, Bob, where have you been? Even though
I've been all over. My story is mostly about the United States, which I know you have a lot of people that travel internationally.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I have a smidgen of international travel, but I've been to, what did I tell you now the other day? I think it was 46. Yes, it's 46 of the 50 states. Correct. I should remember this, right? So I'm bringing up my map that I've got on my phone here. So yeah, I've been to 46, so we could call it the 46.
The 46.
That's the title.
There we go. All right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you something before I forget. So your first and I guess only international travel, right, was with your wife, and it was after you got married.
Mm-hmm.
Had she traveled internationally before, or was it just something you guys decided to do together?
No, she had been to Europe, I think, twice. Well, actually, I've been internationally once, but people don't count it because I went to Canada.
Okay.
Before we got married, I went to Canada. And I don't even think I had to have a passport back then. So
no,
I went to, I had a friend that was, yeah, exactly. I did. So I had a friend who's living north of Seattle, and I went to visit. And then we drove up to Vancouver and, went to Vancouver. But I know I did not have a passport in those days because I didn't get my passport until after college. So this was during college. So, yeah, we went. This is olden days when they let you cross the border with just winking at them and giving them, giving them a loony. So, so I went to Canada then. But then, I didn't go to Europe until well after I was married. And my wife had been to Europe at least twice prior, as both times I think as a student.
Okay.
Once in high school and once in college. So yeah, she she had been more places and so forth, and really liked it. And my wife speaks French as well, so that helps out, right? So
Yeah. Remind me where you told me where you guys went in Europe. I know you bounced around a few places, right?
yeah, so it was the big tour for us was in 2017. We went to London, and then to Dublin, Paris, Cologne, Germany, or Cologne, Zurich, and back home. I think that was it.
Well, before we get to your extensive US travels, is there anything that stood out to you from being in Europe in those places, that like memories that stand out for you, or even, especially having your young kids and, seeing
Hmm.
them, did they understand that they were in another country at that age,
Oh yeah, yeah. So
or was it?
they were like preteen and teen. So
Oh, okay.
my
I
daughter
don't know
was a
why I was thinking they
teenager.
were younger than
Yeah,
that.
no. Well, I talked about him being really little while we did some traveling, but that
Okay.
was in the States. But no, they were essentially both teenagers. One a young teenager, and one, well, both of them kind of young. One was kind of preteen, but yeah, oh yeah, they did, and it was a big deal. And they took it all in and really enjoyed it, and have aspirations to do more. So it hasn't, we've traveled over the United States for our family vacations and stuff. Even though my kids are grown up now, we still go, but we haven't been overseas again. But they still have aspirations to go overseas, and they keep their passports up to date. So because they don't want to miss out on any opportunity that may happen out of nowhere. My daughter's boyfriend has gone to London. She didn't get to go with him, but he had to go to London for some work. And so far, he had never been out of the country. And so she was, kind of prepped him a little bit and was really aggravated that she didn't get to go. But, that was his foray for work, and he had to go get his passport and get everything. And he was not prepared. And so she kind of helped him along, even though she was a little bit jealous of the
Oh, I'm
fact that he got
sure.
to go stay in London for about a week on business and then come back. But no, they really did. And I think for my son it really was almost life changing. He was a little younger, and it really did open his eyes to the world. He was a little bit more, my daughter's a little more adventuresome typically, and he's a little more reserved. And so after they've gone, I mean, to this day, he's still much more open to things than he was before, where he was like, I don't want to, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to do this, because it's kind of, overwhelming.
Mhm.
And then, this just the travel alone makes it so things aren't so overwhelming, because it's never super. We don't get to travel first class everywhere and have
Right.
people come pick us up, at every turn. We still have to get our own bags and everything. And so that kind of travel, kind of, prepares you, right, for knowing that, stuff is not going to go the way you want it to every time, and you kind of roll with it. And that's the kind of stuff that experiencing helps you with other things in your life, right? So you don't have to feel, like, oh, we have to make this train, and how we're going to get there in time, and all of this. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of anxiety that goes with that. But once you get through it, then you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Or if we miss the train, who cares? There's another train, right? And so then that helps you get over all these anxieties that you might have for other things that are like that are pressure based, kind of things. And so I think that really helped him at that age, because he really was, kind of skewing towards uh, the side of not wanting to do anything like that. Oh, I don't want to get outside my comfort zone. You know what I mean? And it sounds kind of kooky, because you're like, hey kid, we're you're gonna go, overseas, and someone's paying for everything.
And
Be a
keeping you
little
safe and
grateful.
all that.
Yeah. We're watching over you. You're not alone, but you have to go through it, even though, that part of it is not really what's registering in his head. In his head, he's like, oh my gosh, I gotta, I want to be someplace that, I have no idea. Right. But then you get there and you're like, oh, this is fine. This is good. And you survive it, and you see all kinds of, interesting things, and stuff happens, and you get exposed to stuff,
I think
and
that's
it's
great that
great.
that happened for him. And I remember still the first time that I ever flew when I was in my 20s, and I flew in the
Yeah.
United States, and it was just it was, I think, I don't even know if I had a connecting flight, but I remember being very nervous, even though it was for work. And I remember I was flying with someone who I kind of knew, but still going through the process was, and this was obviously
Right.
was it pre 9? No, it was post 9/11. So things had
Really?
already kind of ramped up a little bit. But yeah, and now like I love the process of flying. Even from the very beginning, walking into the airport is one of my favorite things. It's just, but you're absolutely right. Going through those challenges and having to roll with, now there's a delay. Oh my gosh, am I going to be able to catch my connecting flight? I remember one time in Europe, we had a connecting flight and we were so delayed getting through the security line that we literally had to run. It was my wife, my daughter, and myself. Of course, our daughter was in the best shape of all of us. She was a teenager, played volleyball and stuff. So she ran as fast as she could and made it to the gate before we did and got them to wait for us. But they were ready to close the door.
Oh, that's nice.
It's insane.
Save the day.
Although we ended up still waiting because they realized so many people were behind. But
That's
we
what
didn't know at the time.
It dawned on them. Wait a minute. You mean this is a full flight?
Yeah, right.
Goodness.
Anyway, those experiences, you're right, absolutely do make you feel like in other situations in life that, hey, you know what, this isn't so bad. I can probably get through this.
Yeah, I mean, you survive. I mean, obviously these aren't life or death kind of a situation, but if you're used to everything happening like clockwork, right? You go to school, you get picked up from school, or you ride the bus home, and everybody's where they're supposed to be, and your food arrives on time. And everything whenever you're going out, then I mean that everything's up in the air, right? So then my kids always make fun of us because we went to Europe and we were so busy, right? We missed meals constantly, right? So,
oh, really?
We would like lunch would just go by, so we would be too busy doing stuff and everything, and then the next thing you know, it's like getting late, and we're like, oh, I guess we missed lunch, and so then we would just wait for dinner because it was only like a couple hours till dinner time, and so.
But a lot of places in Europe they eat dinner late.
Oh, they eat late, yeah.
But you've got better seating.
Yeah, but it was funny because they're like, well, yeah, it was great, but we didn't get to eat anything, and it's like, well, we were having fun, right? We were doing stuff. But we were not. I mean, yes, we were kind of there to eat in one regard, but we weren't on like some kind of gastronomic tour here. We were there to go see stuff, so that's what we did. But yeah, they always make fun of us because everybody's not being fed at a regular interval.
Was there anything in Europe of the places that you went that stands out to you as like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen or done?
Well, one of the beautiful places, as far as like, if you're standing around, you're like, this is civilization. This is the way we all should live. Happened in Lucerne, Switzerland. So we went to Lucerne on a day trip from Zurich, and we were in Lucerne, and architecture is beautiful, and they have a lake right there, by their downtown, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, and it was just so incredibly beautiful. The mountains, the Alps are in the background. It looked fake. They were so nice looking. And I'm like, this is civilization. This is being totally civilized. Now, it cost a lot of money to live in Lucerne. And but everything was incredibly clean. And the only thing that brought you back into reality was they had armed people walking around with machine guns, right?
Yeah.
And that's the downer. But to be honest with you, all of the militaristic people that we encountered were all incredibly nice, and they weren't like frowning and giving you looking at you like you're shifty or something. Yeah. They were all incredibly nice people, right? They weren't menacing at all. But the menace was just the fact that they were so visible.
It snaps you back into like some sense of reality. This isn't
right. So that was really the only thing. And then everything else, though, I mean, it was just like, if you wanted all the amenities of the 21st century with all of the charm of the 19th century, that's what you had there. It was so charming and pretty and clean. I'm like, we went on a cruise on the lake on a boat, which was an electric boat because they didn't allow gas boats, as far as I know, at least not for the touristy stuff. And so clean, you could just see the water was so clear, and it wasn't garbage everywhere. And I thought, wow, we ate at a cafe on the sidewalk, and it just was like, very, very, it seemed very controlled in one way because it was, like being inside a theme park, but you were in a city.
Yeah, that's
you know
incredible. But what I hear you saying is at the cost, civilization is something that you visit and not. And
Well, in that regard, yes. So if you think about it that way, yeah. I mean, because if you go to Paris, Paris is very charming, and I love going to Paris. I'm not, complaining about Paris, but Paris is dirty in places, and overly dirty, right? So it has all the problems of a modern city, with litter and trash and just being a city that's used, right? So there's cars everywhere and people everywhere, and with that comes kind of the flotsam and jetsam of life. And so, yeah, but in Lucerne, for some reason, that they had something going on to where that wasn't, you didn't get that. You got a different feel. And I mean, there's still a lot of people and everything, but I marveled that I'm going to think of all these weird things, right, out of the norm. They must have had a bank of like 10 different recycling options. So you would walk up to go like a garbage can, but it didn't look like a garbage can. And it didn't have stuff sitting around the garbage can like you get whenever it gets too full in most places. But they had all these bins that were labeled. So for glass and for plastic and it was, and without somebody yelling at you, all the signage and stuff said, take care of this place. Here's how you do it. Here's where things go. Everything has a place, and you need to follow the rules.
And you'd probably feel guilty if you don't.
You would, because exactly, because there's nothing, if you drop something, it's noticeable, and you feel like you'll be noticed because you'll be rather than everybody dropping stuff, nobody is, and so therefore you have to kind of toe the line a little bit. But it just was, and I just remember looking, and I was like, that's the Alps over here. And I'm like, I can't believe it. We went out on the lake on the boat, and you're looking out, and you're like, that's a gondola going up the mountain, and it's so tiny.
Wow.
But it almost looked fake because it was so, so beautiful.
Yeah.
We're not used to seeing these kind of things, normally. We live in the Midwest, and so there's not a lot of mountains around here, especially, like that. And so, yeah, the majesty of it was just overwhelming at times. And, you just don't get that every day. And it was very well kept, very well kept. I'm sure they have their problems, obviously, but I didn't see them that day. So that was fantastic.
Is it contrasting with Zurich or just different?
Zurich, it was different. Well, Zurich was much more, metropolitan city, right?
So that makes sense.
I would say more like Paris in that regard. It's still a very nice city, and things had its charm, but it was not. Lucerne was like managed, like whoever runs Lucerne, has a good budget, because everything was managed. I'll give you the example. So we were just there this year. If you ever been to Estes Park in Colorado, right? So we love to go to. Oh, okay. Well, you should go there. It's a very managed city. Okay. So Estes Park would be it's not quite the same way. Lucerne was dreamy. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've been in love with this environment. We've been to Estes Park several times. Estes Park is a very managed area in the Rocky Mountains, right? And you can see the Rocky Mountains there, and it's incredibly beautiful. And in the city itself is very well maintained. Because I remember we got up early one morning, and my wife and I were walking or something while we were there, and they literally had a team of people cleaning up the main streets. Like they were out with, brooms, literally sweeping the sidewalks and picking everything up and maintaining it and taking all the garbage away. And I'm assuming that's what they did in Lucerne as well. It's kind of this hidden, world where they do it off hours and make sure that whenever everybody really gets up, that it's looking a certain way. And so, yeah, that's another, that's a place in the United States that I think is really beautiful because it's right at the entrance to the Rocky Mountain National Park. So you can go up in the mountains. And this year we went to the Continental Divide with 11,000 feet or whatever it is. And we lucked out because we did this in September. And we lucked out because the day we went, no snow. A day later, it was snowed in. You couldn't go there. So,
oh wow,
yeah, because we were on the cusp of the seasonal change. So we lucked out with our planning because we wanted to see the fall foliage up there, and so that's why we planned the trip at that time. But we weren't sure if we were going to be able to make it to the top. But it was still open, and there was I don't remember seeing. I mean, there may have been a little bit of snow, but not like treacherous. And then I think they got like a foot of snow or something a day later. So
wow.
Then you
was
it up there.
How was the foliage? Was it what you hoped it would be?
Yeah. It was beautiful. So I mean, there's a lot of fir trees or pine trees that have the needles and everything, but we were specifically looking, the ash trees turn yellow, and so they're really contrasting with all the rest of it. And it was really beautiful. And we went, we had never been all the way to the top because I don't know why. We'd been there in the summertime. I don't know why we didn't go to the top then, but we didn't. And we went in the wintertime before, and you can't go to the top, basically. You can only go about 7,000 feet because otherwise the roads just get snowed in for months.
How high is it?
What's that?
How high is it?
I think we were at the top. We were at like 11,300 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's a good view.
Yeah, that's.
You go up. I mean, being lazy, I didn't have to climb it. It's not like the Mount Everest or anything. There's a road, and you go up to the top, and then you walk a little ways to get higher. But it's not a struggle. I'll put it that way.
That's significant,
definitely,
though. I mean,
definitely for the tourists.
I spent a few days in. We went to Machu Picchu, and so we went to Cusco first, like everyone does, and you try to acclimate to the elevation there, and that's about the same elevation. I don't know, but granted, we were there for like I said, a couple of days, not just maybe a couple of hours, but it got me, man. It got me pretty good.
Yeah,
for the first day.
I've been fairly lucky in that so far, at least my experience has not been, I mean, you get winded faster, but I have not felt bad. So we went to Hawaii and did the, Dawn on the Volcano trip. I can't remember the name of it now, but anyway, Mauna Loa, I think it is, and so forth. That's pretty high up there. It's like 10,000 feet. Yeah, I didn't feel too bad there either. I mean, I never really feel really bad. My wife always says she feels a little bit of altitude sickness, but I've lucked out, I think. I don't know why, but
and it certainly wasn't
not
severe.
That I'm in great shape or anything, but
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't severe, but it was definitely. I just felt off, and
maybe I feel off all the time, and so I never notice it.
That's it. So normal for you is bad.
Yeah, it's just like this is just like sea level. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
And so back to Hawaii for a second. So that Hawaii volcano, is that like going all the way to the very tippy top of it and like actually looking down in it, or?
Yeah, we were. Well, it's not active, I don't think. At least it wasn't where we were at.
That would be.
But there are active volcanoes on the island. We weren't on an active one. But yeah, you're going all the way up to the crater, and you can look down it. But the idea is you get to see. I mean, I think we left because it takes forever to get up there in the bus because it just winds around. And we left. I think we got picked up at 1:00 in the morning, and to get to the to our destination by the time the sunrise broke. We would be there about 10-15 minutes early or something. And so, yeah, it was like 4 something. And then you've got to make your way back down. It takes forever. It was like, that was an exhausting day because, I mean, you didn't do a lot because you rode in this car, but just getting up in the middle of the night, going up and then coming back was just exhausting
Oh, for sure.
to go through that process. But I mean, yeah, it was beautiful. It was, I would, I certainly would tell people that that's something to do, because I mean, when are you going to do it again? You'll never do it again.
Yeah.
So now we were on Maui, and we were on Maui before the fires. So we saw what I will call old Maui. Now there's new Maui. So because a lot of the island got destroyed in the fires. So, old Maui was great because it was tiny roads, and there was, there wasn't a lot of like chain restaurants or anything. So you didn't see like TGI Fridays or Applebee's or anything like that. There were chain restaurants over towards the airport, but not in the downtown area. It was all places that had been there for a long time, and were all local, and so forth. And so I don't know I haven't taken too much of a look since then, but my worry was after this fire that, because it's so expensive, right?
Yeah.
That rebuilding may not be an option for some people, and they'll sell out to these deeper pockets, and it'll kind of lose the charm that it had. So,
Yeah,
I hope not.
and I'm not sure if
It's been
that's
rolled
happened.
back again. So
I have a friend of mine who lives in Hawaii, has lived there for quite some time. He was actually on one of my early episodes, but he and I haven't really been in touch in a while. I should check in with him, because I know that there was so much loss and devastation.
yeah, a lot. Yeah.
You're probably, I mean, very well could be right. I mean, that makes sense that, the land is so precious. And as far as not just because for the natives, but for the fact of owning land in Hawaii, that I am sure that, people who have the money would give anything to have the chance to.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, it made opportunity, because, everything was status quo. The fire takes out, and then, who knows what people's situations were with insurance, and then the insurance isn't always going to be your best friend with these kind of things. And so then that's when, opportunities arise for things to change hands and whatnot. So, but I and then the other thing is, I mean, it's because it was built, I guess, kind of like in the 40s and 50s, right? Was when kind of this development of this kind of happened, maybe a little before that, but not a lot. And so everything was much smaller, right? So the roads were very small, and the buildings and so forth were very small. And so it had a totally different aesthetic than we are familiar with on newer construction, right?
Sure.
So, and it had its own aesthetic, right? So there's certain places that if you go, even in the United States, which I know people think it's all strip malls and 7-Elevens, but they have a totally different quality to them. So we went to Nantucket, and then there's a Nantucket style. When I say Nantucket and you think of a building, you have a mental image, right? Well, of the shingles. Yeah, Cape Cod style. Yeah, and Hawaii had a thing as well. The way they built things, it was definitely their own style, but it's just not quite as glaring, I guess, as that is, right? Because you're like, you don't ever see shaker shingles all the way down the side of a building.
Sure.
That's not normal, but Hawaii is much more open air, and it's like, look like the Isle of Dr. Moreau. No, I'm just joking, but a lot of open air, open air stuff, and the buildings were, had a bit of an Asian flair, but not, totally over the top or anything. So, but kind of a minimalism a little bit, I would say, to it, because, you can't, there's not just lumber hanging out on the island everywhere. So everything has to get shipped in. So therefore you have to be a little bit more conscious of what you're doing, unless you want to lose your shirt on building things. So yeah, so I think it was very quaint as well, extremely quaint. And everybody's walking around. The weather's so nice, and it's a totally different attitude.
Laid back vibe,
yeah. I will tell you, this is going to sound terrible, Bill. I gotta tell this story. So, of all the places you go, a lot of different places, and everybody, especially if you go into these larger population areas where a lot of people want to be, you have people who don't have homes, right? So you have homeless people, and oddly enough, Hawaii obviously had their share of homeless people, but not one of them asked me for anything while I was walking around.
Wow.
Now, other places I've been, you go to New Orleans, it's
Mm-hmm.
constant. You
Mm-hmm.
go to San Francisco, it's constant. And, these other places, Washington, D.C., but there, I'm like, it's just like they were living. I'm
Yeah.
living. I mean, maybe they weren't homeless. I don't know, but but you did see people on, tents in the public beaches, but they were all minding their own business and doing their own thing. And, there wasn't this constant barrage, of people, knowing that you're a tourist, because it becomes pretty obvious,
Right.
and and kind of hitting you up, right? So I marveled on that a little bit, because we had have had experiences where that's the case, and it's sad um that has to happen, or it doesn't have to happen, I'll put it that way, that this happens, and there's not resources to help folks that are available. But I think I would say that some of the folks there were just like, I just like living this way.
Yeah.
I don't mind. It's
Kind of like you
nice.
said too, though. Whoever, I'm sure not everybody was in a tent by the beach, but who knows? Those people might have just been doing that for just a way to get away, and they actually were doing it on purpose.
Could be.
I mean, could worse things
I had
to
a feeling.
maybe not. Maybe
No,
not. I wasn't there to
the
see it.
case.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
but,
some things kind of stick out a little bit, but
no, I gotcha.
yeah, but no, but I mean, yeah, I was like, I have Miles, actually, we'll talk on our show about this, because I do have a problem. I have a personal problem, which I don't know how I developed this over time, but panhandling bothers me. I don't mind giving people money. If they're sitting around, they say, have something, sitting out, but I don't like it when people ask me for money. And so he always makes fun of me, because he says I'm a terrible person. But I'm like, for whatever reason, the difference between me making the decision and them hassling me is what the difference is, right? I know this is not the topic you want to talk about, but nobody asked me for anything in Hawaii. So I was like, I'm fine with that. If I have a couple of bucks and I toss them your way, then everybody's blessed, right? I just didn't want to have the everybody hounding me.
Yeah. I get it.
For some reason, that just rubs me the wrong way. So,
and there's definitely countries outside of the U.S. where that's very,
Oh,
very
sure.
prevalent, and even more, way more in your face than in the
Mhm.
U.S. Even most of the time, they're trying to sell you something. They're not just
Right.
begging. But
right.
yeah, I know what you're saying, though. That the
Yeah, down
feeling
at
is
the Eiffel Tower, you can get a nice Eiffel Tower from these guys that are yelling at you by an Eiffel Tower.
Oh, I mean, if you are near the Trevi Fountain in Rome, I mean, if you just let a kind person take your picture, that's going to cost
Right.
you. So with
I
your own
love
phone.
that, we were in Paris and we walked around a lot, and after we were there for a little while, a few days and so forth, and there's these guys sitting on luggage, but this was the deal, because I seen him in multiple places, because it was the same guy on the same piece of luggage, and he just moved around throughout the day. So like in the morning he was by the croissant place, and then in the afternoon he's by the lunch place. And he didn't really say much, but it wasn't more than one person. It was almost like they were, a crew of people with luggage that they would go sit on, but there was nothing in the luggage. It was empty, because I saw him pick it up and there was no weight to it. And so, yeah, I was like, well, this is interesting. An interesting way but they were, doing their thing. They weren't being overly obnoxious or anything. It's just, I happened to notice it as we walked around the city there in that area. So,
What was their game? What were they? Do you know?
yeah, people would give them money. They'd be like, I'm stranded.
Okay.
I'm a stranded traveler.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on. That's terrible.
That was the gimmick. And they basically had these suitcases to look like a stranded person, so that they would have some sympathy for people, and then they would give them money. And
Oh, wow.
but that was kind of the game, because at first I was like, well, that's interesting, and then after I saw the same people, I'm like, okay, what's the game here? And then it's terrible that I was even thinking about that on my vacation, but I was as we walked by.
Well, and then so this is a total side note. We will get back to travel. This is a total side note. You were talked about something that kind of bothers you. One of my biggest pet peeves in life is when I'm watching a television show or a movie and they pick up a cup of coffee and you can tell very clearly that that cup is completely empty. Yeah. I mean, put water in it to give it some weight or something. But yeah, so when they pick up that suitcase, you could tell immediately that it was empty.
Immediately, yeah. And then, I mean, they were all busted down because they sat on them. They literally sat on the suitcase, so they're all kind of busted up. So, it was a bit of a ruse. But oddly enough, I mean, they weren't, again, another place where they weren't really totally overt, where they're like, literally my children were getting hollered at by people in New Orleans for money. And I'm like, what's way over the line, buddy? You can talk to me. But
even in New Orleans, like the buskers, I think are wonderful. And maybe it's a little bit different. They're typically are probably not homeless, but they're not living beyond, they're not making tons of money and then going to the street and playing music.
Right.
And
right.
driving their Lexus when they leave.
Right.
They're still living a modest life, but they're performing because...
Well, they're performing. That becomes a bit of a transaction then, right? It's not...
Yes.
I'm giving you, this and you're just hassling me.
And many of them are very
you're
good.
playing the music and then I'm giving you some money for your doing your talent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. That's the difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree too. But
so let's go in a more positive direction.
Well, I just wanted to ask you because we still haven't spent much time in the continental U.S. because we touched on Colorado, but
we bounce around a lot.
St. Louis, which is fine. I actually love it. But before we completely stray from Europe, is there anything from like England, like London or Germany that like stood out for you as some great memories?
Unfortunately, I feel bad. All my stories are going to sound negative. So
no, it's okay. That's okay.
We were in Cologne. No, it was all very positive experience. It's just these weird things that I encountered. It was like, well, that was interesting. We're in Cologne, C-O-L-N. We call it Cologne, right, when we say it. And Cologne, Germany has a cathedral that is there that is just magnificent, right? And I don't even think we went into the cathedral, to be honest with you. We just walked around the outside. But the wild thing about it, and it's from like the 15 or 1600s, right? It's very, very old. And it was almost like it wasn't real because it was so different than everything around it. And we went and, has a plaza and everything. So we went up and took it all in and took pictures and walked around and everything. But it was almost like you were on the holodeck or something if you're a Star Trek person, because it was so unreal to be close to it. Had flying buttresses, the whole thing, right? And so that was fantastic to see. Then we also did a tour of the city as part of staying there. And this is the sad part. And this is part of the reason why that cathedral looks so fantastic is because it's the only thing that survived the war.
Oh, wow.
And so every other building, the terrible part of it was we're doing this tour and they kept saying about what used to be here that was decimated during World War II. And so there was no real buildings that weren't older than around the late 40s because it took a while to clean everything up and rebuild.
That's incredible.
And so it was so sad because there was only like this really small pocket of houses that were originally in that city. And everything else was built after the war. And sometimes, in the 50s and 60s, because it just took that long to rebuild. Because that whole city was essentially bombed into oblivion during World War II. But they were fairly upbeat about doing it on the tour. But, when you're thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute, the reason that all we see is these, 50s and 60s style buildings is because literally everything else was obliviate, just knocked to the ground. It's only incredible. Like that's why the cathedral looks so out of place is because it all used to look like that until World War II happened.
Yeah.
And, you can't separate the fact that these things just didn't fall down and everybody was okie dokie.
Right. They didn't modernize on purpose.
Right. A lot of people died,
Mhm.
right? And here you are running around the city on a bus. But so, I mean, that's a little bit of a morbid thought, but I mean, they were very proud of the rebuild and everything. And it was really quite neat. I guess I'm talking a little bit more about architecture than I thought I would, but because I always love to see the architecture everywhere we go, because a lot of it's so different. And so they're very proud of that and so forth, and I'm very proud of the cathedral. But, the reason behind it was because, we had this devastating war that happened. And at the end of it, the Allied forces basically just bombed everything to get the war to end.
Wow. Well, one of my favorite things, for what it's worth, one of my favorite things in Europe, basically any country I've been to, is the cathedrals. I mean, when you travel in the United States and you see some of these really old ornate churches and whatever, really old is very relative. Very old there is, you're talking centuries and millennia or whatever. Like these things, places are so ancient, and it's mind blowing how some of these places have survived not just wars but just survived in general, and how they were built so meticulously and so perfectly so long ago. It's nuts.
Well, generationally built. That was one of the things I think with this in Notre Dame and all the big cathedrals like that, was the person who started the project, right? You're like, okay, you're going to be, Bill, you are our head architect, right? You didn't get to see the finished building. You started the project, you worked on it all your life, and then somebody else, or even somebody beyond that, was the person who finally saw it finished.
I don't know if you're a reader, but Ken Follett has an incredible legendary series called Pillars of the Earth, and it's about basically that. It's beautiful. But
so
I digress.
No, I mean, that's you. And we talk about it. This is what travel does, though. This is what travel does, is opens your eyes to the fact that, neighborhood mall gets built by a guy and then he tears it down and builds another one, is not the way of the world, right? Literally, there's generational buildings where the great grandfather started it, and then the great grandson might finish it.
Well, my gosh! Well, look at the Sagrada de Familia, however you say that, in Barcelona. I mean,
right? I was just Barcelona,
but like
generational, exactly.
More than generational. I mean, it's incredible.
That's one place we want to go. So we go to Spain because the Gaudi architecture is. I have friends that have gone and seen all that, and I'm like, oh, that's some place we need to go. To see all that. It's just amazing. And but you don't, every day you don't expose yourself to that. You don't think like that. You don't think about the devastation. You don't think about these kind of things. You don't think about how long it took to make all this, and what kind of commitment. I mean, it's generational commitment to get some of these things done. So,
Well, that's even that. I think a lot of the world sort of understood a lot of the world, but probably not most of the Americans really understood the significance of when Notre Dame was on fire, because it's so significant. Like, just like we're talking about, it's not just neighborhood church kind of got burned and people can raise money and they can get the roof rebuilt or whatever. I mean, this is it cannot be reconstructed as the original, and that's
well, and I mean, you talk about architecture, they've lost the art of making it. They literally can't make it. There's no one who knows how to make it the same way.
Right.
I mean, we've had, you say, well, we have advances and everything. Yes, but it's not the same, I had the pleasure of working in a building that was built at the time, just before the Civil War happened. And I was able to go through it in a big building. And I would be had kind of carte blanche to wander around it. And literally, if you go up into the roof of this building, the beams were like timber. They literally were logs, hewn logs that were holding the roof together of this building. And they're hewn logs from pre 1860, pre 1850, something like that.
That's insane.
And I crawled over them because then you could crawl around up there because it was so big. And you crawl over these hewn logs to go look out a window on the other end of the building. This is a multi-story building, so at the time this was like a marvel, right? And I was able to see it and experience it. Where most people would just see the outside, but and you see graffiti from the 1800s. So people even back then would scratch their name in the wood, no place where it's visible from the time that they were working on it and so forth. And so you go overseas, I mean, you get, like I said, in the 15, 16, here, seeing something that old for us is just amazing, right? So it's interesting, it gives you perspective on life and how short it is.
Yeah.
And that's when you travel like that or get to have these experiences, that's what helps that perspective sink in. It's not just flashing by you. It's not a death scroll. Oh, neat. There's a thing from 1775. You're there and you're experiencing it firsthand and you're absorbing it as opposed to something that's just a blip on your screen going by, a million miles an hour.
Yeah. I get myself into a it's not a bad thing, I don't think, but reverent, I guess, when I get to some of these places and I think about like, what today would take still a massive crew to build something. This took, I mean, multiples of the amount of people as it did then. Mm-hmm. And like these people worked their fingers to the bone. They worked from sun up to sundown. This was their life for years and years to provide for their families and whatever. Mm-hmm. I try to kind of think about like, what was it like for these people back then who were actually building this so that we could enjoy it today, and not even realizing, right, not even having any sort of thought that hundreds and hundreds of years from now, somebody could still be walking through these doors. I don't spend too much time focused on things like that, but I do think about things like that because it's like every human being's life matters so much. And the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, that kind of thing. Like, right. But there's some part of that, like our lives touch each other millennia apart. It's so crazy to me.
Well, I think to me, that's what I think is one of the great downfalls of kind of the modern age is that we don't budget takes precedence.
Yeah, I don't feel that walking into the Macy's, even if it's been, even if it was a 100-year-old building.
Right. And unfortunately, then you don't, I mean, the only buildings that get that kind of treatment are typically public buildings because they have a little bit more, leeway with some of that. You get the granite and all that kind of stuff. But even nowadays, not as much with those. I mean, if you go to you go to Washington, D.C., I mean, a lot of older buildings that you can go walk through and hear about. We went to Philadelphia, right? So downtown Philadelphia, Independence Hall, right? 1700s buildings down there. It's just great to be in the presence of that. I mean, at the time, it probably was no great shakes. They're like, Independence Hall, whatever. Now the time has passed and so much, history has been made there. It's like, wow, that's fascinating, right? But we don't have enough of that, right? Because people don't get to experience it with any kind of regularity. They would just watch as the churn, the constant churn of things happens, as opposed to these things that become revered and special and so forth. I mean, even you talk about cathedrals over the last, 25 or 30 years, there's a lot of cathedrals in St. Louis because it was, a lot of Catholic population and they can't afford them anymore and they sell them off and then they just go into disrepair. I mean, somebody tries to do something with them, but then they just can't because it takes a brewery. Yeah. Well, sometimes they do, and that's kind of interesting in and of itself. But yeah, it's hard to do that because of the economics of it all, right? So, so then we don't get those, kind of privately funded buildings anymore. Everything becomes a publicly funded building because they can afford to maintain it, as opposed to a privately funded building, which we went to, and I'm blanking on I think it was one of the DuPont's houses, I want to say. I'm blanking the name of their estate, but it's in Delaware, and the house is still there, and the grounds are still there, and everything's still there. It's a museum now, and it was just fascinating to go through it. They had the biggest collection of early American furniture in the nation, right? So like made in the 1700s, and so you got to walk through it. It's all just so spectacular and so forth. And so when you go through, you get this sense of history. You get this sense of austerity a little bit, right? Because they were obviously very wealthy, and it's still maintained to this day. And so there's we my children always make fun of us, my wife and I, because they said we don't go on vacation, we go on history lessons, because we typically go to places that have history, right? So we took them to Colonial Williamsburg when they were little kids, which is in Virginia, and apparently used to be quite popular, but not when we went, right? And so they have all the reenactors, and all the buildings are made in the style of the colonial village and so forth. And so, we walked through. They had a good time. It was a great fun. But as they got older, they were being a little bit ornery, and I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to learn this year on vacation?
What they're doing, the finger quotes vacation.
That was the colonial times, and then, but we just love, I always say, I usually describe our vacations as history and nature. So if it's got something to do with history or nature, then that's where we want to go, because, that's what we like. It has to be beautiful nature around, and hopefully there's something historic in the mix.
Yeah.
Because that's what we tend to gravitate towards. But they're they're just taking jabs at their parents, is what they're doing.
As they probably will forever.
Like, yeah, I'm like, you don't have to come. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
But
right.
Like, no, I want to go. We just don't. We just want to complain about it. But
that's funny.
And in state capitals, we end up going to state capitals a lot, because that's usually where those two things meet.
Yeah.
And so we've been to a lot of state capitals across the country, various ones. Not all of them. I mean, maybe that'll be a new goal once we get all of our states done. But we end up in a lot of state capitals when we travel around, it seems like, just because that's usually the connection between history and nature. Seems to fit our MO.
Yeah. Well, I would say this. Let's touch on some of your favorite places, most memorable experiences in the United States before we get to our final 5 questions. I cannot believe I looked at the clock and it was been well over an hour already. It's insane.
I know. Look at that.
But in the interest of time, and I'm not in a rush, but we haven't hardly touched on the U.S.
Yeah, we've been all over the place. So, yeah, oddly enough, this year we went to Michigan, and we went to, again, this is another one of these things, history and nature, Mackinac Island. I don't know if you've ever been to Mackinac.
I haven't, but I have heard really wonderful things about it.
Yeah, so their claim to fame is there's no cars on Mackinac Island. Everything is by horse-drawn carriage or buggy or bicycle, right? Or not a car, but some kind of smaller transportation, pedal power or otherwise. And so we've been wanting to go to Michigan because we hadn't been. It was one of the states we needed to tick off. And so we chose to go to Mackinac, and it's right there between the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan is an island. Mackinac Island is out there between the two halves of Michigan. But it was, so you take the ferry over, and then basically you walk around, and there's an old fort, because it was a good, for shipping and everything, it was a good place to be to protect the shipping lanes and so forth. But just absolutely beautiful. So it's one of the more recent things I've been to, and I had heard about it and read about it and seen some things and whatnot. But it's just an incredibly beautiful place, because most of the island isn't even developed. So you go to the port to take the ferry over and so forth, and you get off the port, and most of the stuff is right there, and there's a smattering of houses, and then there's a big grand hotel. There's little hotels like there by the port, but nothing, again, weird, not a lot of chains or anything like that. You're not going to see the Holiday Inn or the Best Western or anything. And then there's the Grand Hotel up on the hill. But most of most of the island is just nature, and so you can just walk, and it doesn't take that long to walk, most of the island, but you can walk through the woods, and it's just wild woods, and there's places to go see with beautiful scenery, and look out onto the water, across the water, over to the upper side or the lower side, and it really is quite an experience. I mean, it's very expensive to stay there. We didn't actually stay on the island because it was so we could stay on the shore on the north. We stayed on the lower peninsula. Everybody could stay there much, much cheaper for longer than staying on the island because it's just so incredibly expensive. I mean, you're talking like, $1,000 a night kind of stuff. So, but you can go for the day and traipse around. My daughter and her boyfriend rented bicycles and basically rode around the island. It's about 5 miles, not that long. And I mean, it's a great day. It's not overly hilly as islands go. I mean, the island's got a big mound in the middle, but as far as riding the bike around the edge, it's not too bad.
Is it one of those
That's
places
one of the
you have
most
to
beautiful.
remind yourself that I'm just right in the middle of the north, but you're in the United States still? Like, this isn't some...
Yeah, no, it really is. And then, literally there's nothing but buggies, and like they literally deliver all the packages and everything via horse.
Wow.
So they have these big flatbed carts that they put, for restaurant supplies. And then they have these big, like Morgan Clydesdale looking type horses that are drawing these wagons down the road, and everybody's hopping on and off and delivering, Coca-Cola,
Amazon packages,
what have you. In Amazon, yeah, it is. But and so it is a bit of a throwback. I mean,
like stepping back in time, I was going to say.
But it was really, I mean, it has an aesthetic, right? And it's very nice. And it, I'm not necessarily the roughing it kind of person. So you have, you can go have lunch and then go off and walk into the woods for a while and then come back and have dinner. And so, I want to be, I'm a very civilized nature person, so I don't want to be overly far away from everything. And because I do like to sleep in a bed, and I do like to have a good meal. And so, it's the perfect combination of all that. And I mean, we walked for hours up into the woods and then walked our way back down to get dinner. So, I'd say if you kind of like that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of history to it as well, obviously, and because it was a British outpost for trade routes in the Americas. And so you have all that history as well, and you can go through the fort and learn all about that. And they have reenactors and all that kind of stuff. But it's just kind of a neat place, kind of like Nantucket. I told you we went to Nantucket. Love being on Nantucket again. The port area, very bustling and city-like, but it was a little more populated, I'd say, than Mackinac. But you can kind of wander out to the beach, and there's just nothing but beach. And it's beautiful, and it has its own charm, and you get both worlds. You feel like you're away, but you're also in the mix. So you spend a little time in flight isolation, and then you go back into town. And so, but that was really nice as well. And we took a ferry over to that as well, because you can take a car there. We actually did have a car that we rented. But getting your own car to the island is quite difficult and costly. So basically, you just park your car, take the ferry, and then if you need a car, because we stayed there for a better part of a week, I think, then you rent one on the island. And so there's island cars, right? And so it's not you're not going to get the latest and greatest. I can't remember what we got, but it was an older car, comparatively speaking, when you were talking about rental cars. But you don't really go that far. That island's a little bit much bigger than Mackinac. You can't really walk all of it but you could walk it over the course of a day, I'm sure. But it was more convenient to drive to some of the places we wanted to go. So
yeah, we went to Cape Cod many times when I was a kid. That was one of our destinations. We never went to Nantucket Island.
Yeah, it's out there. I mean, we were on the it was the high-speed ferry, and I think it went 35 knots or 30 knots, which is pretty fast for a boat. And it took us an hour, I think, to get out there. So
Wow.
it's not like, right there.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
You're not building
You
a
gotta
bridge
go for a
anytime
while.
soon.
Right. It's not going to be building the bridge. Exactly. So, I mean, that's another place there. The funny thing is we finally decided, we've been to Florida. We've been, we went down to the Gulf Coast, the Mississippi and New Orleans and everything. We really are kind of woodsy, mountainy people. And so we always end up going to places that are very woodsy and very mountainous. It seems all the time. We've been to Colorado, I don't know, probably the most, at least 4 or 5 times to Colorado, because we just love that kind of environment, And we went down, we do these tours. We'll probably do a couple more, but so one year we went before COVID, we flew out to Sacramento and got a car and drove around the redwoods and everything. And then literally drove that car all the way down through the Southwest and back home, which took us a little more than 2 weeks. But it was a monster road trip because we went all the way from California to the South, west, and then came back up through Texas and Arkansas to get back to Missouri.
I mean, how many super cool places did you see that you never?
Oh my gosh,
need
everything.
a destination.
Just everything. We stayed in this because you end up staying in places that you would never, think that you would stay.
I've never even
It's not a
existed.
destination. Yeah, we stayed in a little town called Trona, which is right near the desert, right? So we went to the out in the desert one day, but the closest place to stay, and the way it timed out, my wife plans all this stuff. She's amazing to figure all this out. And we stayed in an Airbnb because it was my kids and my brother-in-law and other people. So we stayed in a little town called Trona in this Airbnb, nowhere place. It's just a little town, desert town. And, you'd never, ever probably go there. But it was interesting, it's just interesting to be in places that aren't destination places. Again,
95% of the people you encounter are locals.
Right. Everything's
just
local
living their day-to-day lives.
Right. And so we were our destination was Death Valley. And so, but you could stay in Death Valley. Again, I hate to sound on the budget, but when you have, I think we had 6 people all together. When you got 6 people and you're putting them all up and you're feeding them all and moving them from place to place, the budget has to give. And so we stayed in Trona and then drove into Death Valley in the morning, got up super early to see the sunrise in the desert and drove into Death Valley and to see Death Valley. So, you could stay in Death Valley. There's a hotel there that the Parks Service runs, but it's very expensive, right? So, and if you have that many people, you can't, cram everybody in one room. So we decided to do this, but yeah, it was beautiful. It was amazing to be in the desert. And then we got there super early, so it wasn't as oppressive as it was when we left.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like 120 some degrees.
Oh my God. But it's a dry heat, Bob.
Yeah, it was such a dry heat. It's a depleting heat. And so we walked around down there in the desert for a while and saddled up and left, I think right around noon or so, which was probably the most terrible time to leave, but better not to do that than stand out there for another hour. And then we headed on to our next destination. But we stayed, we went to Roswell because everyone wanted to go see Roswell. So we stayed out outside of Roswell in literally like a cattle ranch, because my wife found this place. It was like there was cows all around the house except for the driveway. You went down a fenced driveway and got into the house. There's a little yard and so forth, but literally cows all around you. And it was like the bunkhouse for a cattle ranch. And that just happened to be haunted.
What?
It turns out, yeah, we're pretty sure it was haunted. So they didn't market it that way. But we stayed there, and yes, something was going on because everybody had a weird thing happen. So yeah, so I mean that's the kind of thing that
Can you elaborate at all? You can't leave me like
sure. So we stayed. It was outside of town, outside of Roswell, which is a ranching town, and we went there obviously for there's a UFO museum and all kinds of kooky, kitschy kind of stuff there, and it was on our path, right, that we were taking through the Southwest, and so my wife's like, well, why don't we stay outside of Roswell? We can go for a day, for an afternoon in Roswell, and then head on our way, and so everybody wanted to do that, so. She found this place, which was like I said, like a rancher's house or a bunk house or something that there's an Airbnb. They redid it, right? So there was multiple places for people to stay. So we get there, and my wife, as a joke, the other thing is we're always late, and so we show up late. It's all dark and everything. So my wife, there's no lights. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and so I kept the headlights on the car, and she said, "I'm going to run in and turn some lights on and so we can get in the place without everybody falling all over each other or hurting themselves because it's so dark." And so she went in, as a joke, she opened up some cabinet doors and then came back out, and everybody came in and all the cabinet doors were open. She's like, that was, she was joking. That wasn't that way. And when I came in, but it was, because she did it. And then we went to dinner, and she admitted to it, and everybody had a good laugh. So then we went into town, went to dinner, came back, and everybody got situated because it had several bedrooms and so forth. And my son, fortunately or unfortunately, he had to sleep on the couch because there wasn't another bedroom. Everybody else got the bedroom. He was kind of odd man out, and so he's sleeping on the couch, and he wakes up in the night, and he thinks he sees somebody peeking around the corner. And so he freaks out. He goes in with his sister and her boyfriend into the room that they had. And he slept in a chair that night and then they heard something. So they were all freaked out, but they didn't leave the room. So then my wife and I had a room, and then there was a bathroom in between us, and then another room where my brother-in-law was staying with his folks. And so we shared that bathroom. Well, I got up in the night, and the bathroom light was on, and I didn't think much of it. I thought, oh, somebody left the bathroom light on, right? But in the night, then, my wife swears she had somebody sat on our bed while we were sleeping. Like, she felt the bed move, like somebody was sitting at the foot of the bed. So we all get up in the morning, not knowing any of this happened to each other, and we get some breakfast, right? And we're all talking, and my son's like, yeah, I thought I saw somebody peeking around the corner. And then my daughter and her boyfriend were saying, they heard stuff. And then I'm like, I go, well, I just assumed somebody left the bathroom light on. And everybody's like, I didn't leave the bathroom light on. And then my wife's like, yeah, I swear somebody sat on the bed. So all this stuff happened in this place.
Are you sure it wasn't the brother-in-law? Because he's the only one who didn't have a story.
Well, I was checking with him about the light because he also noticed the light was on too, and he didn't think he left it on. Well, for me and him, the light was the thing, and I didn't even realize anybody sat on the bed. That was my wife. I was in the bed with her. I don't know what's going on. I was sleeping. So yeah, and no, he didn't do anything. He was out, and yeah, so it was all really weird. And so we joked, and actually I did a story about it on our show. I call it the Scooby-Doo bunk house because it was ghosties and all that kind of stuff. So
I was waiting for you to say you came home from dinner and the cabinets were open again.
No,
something like that. That would have been incredible.
That would have been good, wouldn't it? I wish I should have thought of that. No, this is what happened. And
that's insane.
Yeah, it was just all these little things, right? So, but it was all the one night because we only stayed there. I think we stayed maybe two. I don't remember if it was 2 nights or one night. We only stayed there a very short time. We were traveling, moving across, and so yeah, all that happened, and it's like, wow, that was weird.
Wow.
But it didn't get revealed until the next day because everybody just kind of, other than my son, I think he was the most freaked out and they just kind of waved it off like, right, yeah, whatever. But you could hear the cows mooing outside, it was a whole experience, I'll tell you.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun though. But we've done a couple of those big loops like that. We took the kids to Washington D.C. when they were younger, and drove out and then drove back through places. And then we went up to Niagara Falls, but we did a big loop. We went all the way into New York City and then worked our way back through Vermont, New Hampshire, Vermont, and then to Niagara Falls and then back home. So
That's a massive loop.
lots of, yeah. We do all these big loops. The terrible thing, and I think I told you when we talked before, all the states I have left to go to are not anywhere near each other. So
Right.
Oregon, North Dakota, South Carolina, and Alabama. The only two that are close to each other are South Carolina and Alabama.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's crazy.
North Dakota's not near anything.
Nope. It's just
So,
going to be
yeah.
a big loop. Make your big loop, swing through Pittsburgh.
I know we got to make
'cause-
some big loop. Well, the North Dakota Oregon one is going to be a big loop. So.
Yeah. We'll make your loop down to Alabama and South Carolina, swing up through Pittsburgh, and then I'll show you around.
There you go. We stayed outside of Pittsburgh. My son and I did a little trip out east, kind of a little short trip, and we were up near Pittsburgh on our trip. We went to Shenandoah National Forest, and then worked our way, and we were up in Pennsylvania for a while, and then came back
Nice.
down. So no, but that was just me and him. We just did that on our own. My daughter. At one point, my daughter was really into Broadway, and so my wife and her went out to New York a couple of times to go see shows. And so, kind of as the the equalization there, my son and I, we did a couple of trips, just he and I. And so we went up to Maine, we went to Boston and saw sights in Boston. Went up to Maine, we flew out to Boston, rented a car, drove around up north there in Maine and New Hampshire, and then we did a loop where we just drove out to Shenandoah and looped around.
That's awesome.
That
That's
was
very cool
fun,
to have
yeah.
those memories with your kids too. So
Yeah, I wish he could drive though back then.
Oh, yeah.
I
Take
drove
some
everywhere.
turns. Yeah, for sure.
And nobody to take turns with on that big drive out to Shenandoah. So yeah, he was still, I think, 15 or something. I guess I could have let him drive, but I don't want to chance that. Come on.
So listen, I have one more story from you that I want to hear before we get to the final 5 questions. And this is one of those times that I've had this happen a few times, but not a lot, where I feel like you and I have to do this again sometime down the road, because we are definitely missing a lot of your stories.
Oh yeah, all kinds of stuff.
But in the interest of time, you mentioned that you did some travels with a minor celebrity once upon a time. Are you able to share what that is?
No, did we talk about this before? I'm trying to. Oh yes. Yeah,
you didn't give me any details. That's all you said.
I did. I was very vague, wasn't I?
Extremely.
So, unfortunately, this takes us back to Europe. Is that okay?
Destination does not matter to me.
So, yeah, it wasn't. You said I was traveling with them. I was just happened to be in proximity, so I wasn't with them. I wasn't with them in the sense of that we were traveling together.
Okay.
We ended up traveling together because we were on the same plane. But so yeah, we went to. We were over in Europe. We'd been to London and other places in England, and we were up in Dublin. And then we flew from Dublin over to Paris, and which I want to say, we didn't mention this, but a lot of the European airports are so nice compared to the American airports. Dublin was one of the nicer ones. Zurich had the best airport I've ever been in my life, because it was not an airport; it was a shopping mall and more. I mean, it was like walking through a mall, and they literally had a grocery store inside the airport.
Oh my gosh.
You could go buy apples, go to the produce section of a grocery store, a small one, and get fresh produce at the airport. I thought that was wild.
That's insane.
Yeah, but it was great, right? In the same way, it's great. So anyway, but we were in Dublin, and we were waiting to get on our plane to fly to Paris from Dublin. And I'm sitting there, and it was my wife and kids, and so just us, and we're waiting for everything to happen. And I noticed this lady, rather tall guy, and this woman who obviously looked a bit well-to-do, right? They weren't touristy like us. They were definitely dressed nice, and everything. We're not too far, sitting not too far. We're waiting on the same gate. And so I was looking at him and I'm like, and I'm going to blank on his name. I might have to look it up here, but I can look it up real quick while we're talking. I was like, I was just trying to figure out who this was, who was this person. And I finally figured it out. And I don't know her. I can't tell you her name right off the top. I'm going to look it up real quick because I can't recall, because she wasn't the major actress in this show, but she was in a show called True Blood from 2008 to 2014. And this was 2017 when I saw her traveling. And she was the owner of the bar. If you ever watched that show, her character name was Pam de Beaufort, or I'm sure it was something with an accent because I just said de Beaufort, but her real name is Kristen Bauer. And so she was the bar owner where stuff happened in the show, and she was on, a good portion of the show. So she would be a supporting character. And so it was her and her husband. And I swear, I'm like, her husband reminded me of somebody as well. And his name is Aubrey von Straten, and he is a rock star in Europe, or was. And so they were traveling to Paris from Dublin and were on the same plane as us. There was not really any first class. It's kind of like a Southwest kind of flight. I don't remember the name of the airline, but it was, it wasn't anything super fancy. And they sat in the back of the plane. And so,
Wow.
I tried not to be, what do you want to call it? But as soon as it kind of clicked in my head, I leaned over to my wife. I'm like, that's that lady from True Blood.
That's funny. I recognize her name.
Yeah.
If I looked up, I'm sure I'd recognize her. I did not watch the show, but I've heard of her for sure.
Yeah, she's been in other stuff. Let me look real quick and see. She hasn't been in too much lately, but back in that time period was kind of her, kind of her big time period for that. So that was kind of like at the height of her career, I would say. Right. And that was in the 2000s. I'm looking to see if there's anything else that jumps out at me. I'm scrolling through her IMDb real quick here.
While you're scrolling, I'll tell you real quick, the only really brush that I have like that is we were in Scottsdale, Arizona. I don't know, probably didn't fly out of Scottsdale. I don't know if there was even an airport in Scottsdale. I don't remember. But we were on our way back home, and I'm a big baseball fan. I was going into the Hudson News, and I happened to look over, and I saw this guy, and I was like, man, he looks just like Terry Francona, who was, if people don't know, he was the manager for the Boston Red Sox for a long time, and then the Cleveland Indians / Guardians or whatever. Maybe it was just Guardians then, and now I think he's back with somebody. I don't know who, but I was a huge Red Sox fan when I was younger, and at this time he was with Cleveland. And I just kept looking. I even snapped a little voyeuristic photo just to see if it was him. And then I saw what he was pulling was a Cleveland Guardians labeled bag. So I was like, okay, well, it's definitely him. And then I was not walking around with my wife at that moment. But when I caught up with her, I was like, oh my gosh, I just saw Terry Francona. I know it was him. And then we get to our gate later on, and there he is, standing there. And she's like, just go talk to him. Just go talk to him. And I finally did. And I'm not that type of person. And I did. I walked up to him, Mr. Francona. I just wanted to shake your hand and say, how much I appreciate you and what you did with the Red Sox and whatever. And he didn't say a word to me. He did shake my hand, probably out of just reaction. But I don't think he was pleased. And I said, I don't want to draw attention.
Oh, really?
I just want to shake your hand. And I walked away. But he did not say a single word to me.
Wow.
But I shook his hand. So I was happy. And he's from Pittsburgh. So I could have gone on. But I didn't.
There you go.
But
I did not approach or anything. I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
But I did recognize it. It took me, because it's out of element, right? So it took me a little while. And then once I did, my wife's like, yes, that's who it is. And so forth. So yeah, it was interesting to have that. And her husband, he looked like a rock star. In presence, and I couldn't place him. I didn't know. I had to look it all up and everything later. I'm trying to think if I guess I had my phone. I probably looked it up on the plane when we were, had time. But yeah, it was interesting because you don't you normally think you're gonna
Have like any
run
brush?
into
Yeah.
anybody. I mean, you don't honestly. A lot of times you don't. And it's just one of those happenstances, and obviously not a big star or anything, but
Still cool.
yeah, cool. I mean, we had watched that show together, my wife and I, and so we're familiar. And so once it clicked, it's like, oh yeah, that's Pam from True Blood, and so it was just kind of an interesting experience. I'm trying to think if I don't think I've met. Now the funny thing, we were at Stonehenge on that same trip, and I swear I could never figure out who it was, but there was a guy on our bus who obviously was a musician of some sort, just the way he looked and so forth. But I never could, and I looked and looked when I had time to find out who it was, but I never could. But I know he was a musician for something. He wasn't like the lead singer or anything, but he had to be a drummer or something for a band because of either that, he's got a really good person to dress him because he looked like that. You know what I mean? So you see people and they have a certain look to them that's beyond the norm, right? And so he had that. And actually I talked to him because we were in the back of the bus together, and we were getting off the bus. I'm like, oh, you go ahead. Because I'm a little over 6 foot, so I'm typically taller than the average person, right? And he was taller than me, which also makes you stand out. And his dress and so forth was such that he obviously was involved in something
Yeah.
with the music. And so but I could never figure out to place him. So I looked and looked, but I couldn't think of where else to look to find out who it was. But it was funny because it was on the same trip.
Someday though, you'll be flipping through channels, or you'll pop onto MTV, and they'll actually have a music something on, and it'll click
Behind the music.
someday. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
listen,
I'm hoping it will eventually.
that would be awesome. You have to let me know if you figure it out. So this has been incredible, Bob. And like I said, we definitely have to do this again at some point. We may have like a
Sure.
continuation or part 2. But I do want to get to the final 5 questions. I don't remember. Do you know what these are yet or no?
If I did, I've forgotten them.
Well, there we
So
go.
I'll say no.
Perfect. Okay.
If you asked me, I probably said I don't want to know.
Okay. I may have. So, all right.
Yeah.
I know I didn't tell them to you. So if you didn't listen to
go.
a full episode, you won't know them. So
Yeah, that I didn't listen. I didn't listen all the way to the end, apparently.
there we go. All right. So question number 1 is, of all the places in the world that you have been, and I phrase this very carefully, what is your most memorable meal experience you've ever had outside of your own home?
I am the worst person to ask this question to.
But it doesn't have to be the food.
It doesn't have to be the food. Okay.
Just the meal experience as a whole.
That's a good question. I would say, oddly enough, one of the most picturesque meals I had is we ate at a country club on Maui, and we're seated on the balcony looking out to the ocean at sunset. And so that's probably one of the most memorable. It wasn't even that good a meal, honestly. It was incredibly expensive.
I'm sure.
The meal itself wasn't even that good, but to be there at that moment was very nice, magical in its ambiance.
Very cool. Good answer. Good answer. All right. Question number 2, one of my favorite questions of the set, is, of all of the places in the world that you have been, if I was to even say to you, Bob, here's a free trip, you would say, no, thank you. I don't want to go back.
I don't want to go back. Oh, that's tough. Because I like to go back everywhere. Every place we've gone.
That has been an answer.
I'm thinking here. I would say probably this is going to sound terrible. Because I wouldn't say I wouldn't, but if I never go back to New Orleans, I'll be happy enough.
Okay.
It was a good experience. It wasn't a bad experience, but out of all the places that I've been, it did not live up to its expectation for me. Yeah.
Very fair. Very fair. Okay, so let's flip that then. Of all the places in the world that you have been, where is the
Mhm.
one or two places that, if you couldn't go to all of them, where are the one or two places you have to absolutely get back to?
I would want to go back to Lucerne in Switzerland because it was just amazing to be there. Um, I think that was one of those things where I'm like, wow, if I could live there, I would go live there. If I could afford it, I would do it. Um, so how you say one or two? I can't do more than I just got to do two.
One or two, yeah.
Yeah. I did really enjoy going to Mackinac this year, so I would definitely like to go there. That's a little closer to home, but yeah, Mackinac would be a good one to go to as well. And then obviously Paris is one of those things. Everybody sounds cliched, but I really did enjoy just walking around Paris. The vibe of that city is different than most other places. And if I was going to live and I'm not a city person per se, I like to be out and about, but if I was to go to a city, that would be a city I think I would love to live in and explore.
Awesome. That's a place I still have to get to, actually. So, but it's lower on my list. I just have a lot of places that if I was to answer this next question, Paris won't be one of them. The next question is of all the places in the world that you have not been, I'm sure you probably have a bucket list like we all do, but not your bucket list, just the very top one or two places that you absolutely must get to before you die.
Oh yeah. I don't know if I'll even be able to make it, but I want to go to New Zealand, Wellington, Christchurch, which is really far away.
Yes, it is.
I would pick New Zealand over Australia, but I would take Australia as a close second to go to Sydney in Australia. So yeah, those would be, but they're so far away. That's like a real bucket list thing because that's a journey, right? So that would be a long way to go. And to go to, oddly enough, to go to Japan, I would like to go to Tokyo, but I wouldn't have to. I could go anywhere in Japan, Kyoto or anything, just to go see it.
Yeah.
Again, those are all real far away.
Yeah.
But, I just was in Kansas City yesterday and I liked it a lot. So
There's beauty everywhere.
well, have you never been to Kansas City? I could do a tourist commercial for Kansas City. So it is a fantastic city if you ever get to go. They have fountains and statuary all over the city. Beautiful city.
The football team, I'm not a fan. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I'm not good with that, but
yeah.
I could still visit the city. Just I wouldn't do
Yeah,
it during
the
football
city
season.
is really cool for a Midwestern city. It's much more interesting city than St. Louis as far as that goes.
Nice. All right, Bob. Wrapping with our final question, and this is easy because you'll know the answer if there is one. Where are you going? What's already planned or going to be planned in the near future?
So I think the next place we're going to go is North and South Carolina. So I don't know exactly where. I've been to North Carolina. I was in Charlotte years ago, but my wife hasn't been to North Carolina. We both haven't been to South Carolina. So we're going to do something in the Carolinas, I think, is the next big trip. So
Awesome.
I don't know exactly where, but I usually don't pick, to be honest with you. I'm a passenger in a lot of these things. If we get close to something and I'm really interested, I might go, yeah, let's go by there. Mm-hmm. But I don't pick the main destinations most of the time. I'm very happy to tag along on these things and be the co-driver and take over some of the responsibility.
Yeah, that's typically been my role as well, and it always worked out well. So yeah, this is awesome, Bob. Thank you so much for taking this much time with us and with me, and I really appreciate it very much. I've had so much fun. Is there anything you'd like to add or say before we hit stop?
I will say, for people who are listening and have traveled extensively, if you're in the U.S., come to the Midwest. It's great here. Things are cheap, and there's a lot of interesting things outside of even Chicago. But Chicago is very nice as well. But St. Louis, Kansas City, and parts in between are really quite nice. I know that the Midwest gets a lot of, it's flyover country. They call it that for a reason, but it's really nice here. And you get a lot of beauty in between and still have the city life and historical things as well. So consider it. Consider coming.
Yeah. Well,
it's not as bad as people say.
And congratulations, because you went from St. Louis to being demoted to now you are on the board of the travel tourism for the Midwest of the United States. Great job. Great way to end the show.
Yeah.
So
and I think I'm going to Chicago tomorrow, so get out of town.
There you go. Chicago's a great city. I love it. I need to spend more time there as well. So thanks again, Bob, and I wish you nothing but the best, and I will be tuning in more to Static Radio. I really have enjoyed what I've listened to on there as well. And we will definitely catch up and do this again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it. It was a great fun talking to you. And I'm really glad you're doing this and hopefully, people will get excited and go different places, see different things, do different stuff,
That's it. And you can start small. Just
exactly.
Get out of
you don't
your
have
town.
to go. Yeah, just get out of town. Go to the next town.
Yeah.
I love little towns. I would love to just travel from little town to little town myself. My wife always wants to have some, bigger destination, but I'm like, I could just drive around myself. But
yeah, absolutely. All right, Bob. Thank you so much again, and take care of yourself.
Thanks. You too.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. There was another great guest with some great stories, as always. And I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whybpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site, and check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.